Thanks, folks, for being here. We're going to go through, again, an update on the systems and the issues at PWSA with this water boil, the public safety initiatives that have been taking place, and then the communication issues as well. First, I want to recognize Councilwoman Darlene Harris, whose district has been adversely affected, the majority of her district, with this situation, as well as Councilman Lavelle. And I also want to thank Councilwoman Harris for being in communication and getting word out about this and working with the community to minimize any of the negative impacts. This is a situation that we're going to face time and time again. We have an antiquated system that in certain areas is beyond a failure point. We lack duplicity of backup systems because we never had invested in them. And when we see a problem area occur, it will come with an impact. Now, what's taken decades in order to be able to get to isn't going to be solved overnight. It's going to take at least a decade to be able to solve the problems within PWSA, and it is going to cost billions of dollars. This is just the reality of what we face. What we will do is we will take ownership. We will take on the responsibility to fix this problem so that a generation past the next generation won't have to deal with this situation. We'll leave it as a legacy that we'll have clean water from the point of 2030 to the 2080. And that's the vision that we've put out. With that, in dealing with the present situation, Director, if you can come up and advise what has happened over the course of the past 24 hours, and in particular since last evening.
Good afternoon. Our efforts have been first and foremost to stabilize the system. We have disconnected the reservoir as of 7:30 last night, so therefore the offending reservoir is offline and will not have any water flowing from it to the water system until it is repaired. Secondly, we've begun the process of developing a repair strategy. It requires us to get permits from DEP. It requires us to get approvals from our board as to the funding that would be required. And it also requires us to provide the ability for the system to provide water at all times without the reservoir. So to do that, we've done some other repairs to pumping stations. Actually, we expedited other repairs that were underway. We've moved them up from the end of September to the end of next week. Several of these will be done this weekend. We'll be bringing people in on overtime to do the electrical and other activities required to make these pumps run. So we are confident that that will provide a solid water system as we had previously. We will be running the entire system off of one reservoir at this time, which will be the Highland 2 reservoir. All of our reservoirs are actually very large. They range around 130 million gallons each, which is very large for a system of this type. We also have 10 water storage tanks that supply water to the various pressure districts, all of which are in good condition and have been operating properly. So we're confident that we can make our way through this and provide the water supply and the water quality that the public demands. Now, yesterday I did not say one thing I wanted to say today, and that is that we want to apologize for the problem that this may have caused some of our customers. It's clear that we are dealing with a system that is like a very old car, and at any given point in time, a particular part might fail. Some of those parts will prevent you from driving to someplace. Other parts are such that you can drive without them and make up whatever you need with duct tape, so to speak. I would say that our staff have done a great job keeping this facility, our entire facility, running, and that we should all be very pleased with the work and the commitment that they personally make. I haven't met a stronger group, a more committed group in my career. So I think the public should be confident. The repairs will start next week. We will repair one cell, the east cell, and then we intend to take the west cell down and rebuild it in its entirety. That's the cell where we had the most, appear to have the most problems, and the entire facility was up for reconstruction in 2018. So we missed it by a year, which isn't satisfying, but it is in fact something we knew we would have to do at some point. So it was in our capital plan, and the budgets were available in our capital budget. The last point I'll make is that the overall program will probably take us, by the time we're done with all of the work, probably take us about 9 months. But we intend to have the one cell, the east cell, up and running so we can restore the Lamphere facility by the end of the year. In the meantime, as I said, we've done everything possible to upgrade and make possible backup systems for all of our existing pump stations. And that will ensure that we have water to meet all of our needs.
Thank you. We'll be taking questions afterwards about systems operations, but the other part of this is public safety and the concerns that the community may have about the boil advisory. And with that, and I have to thank our public safety officials working all night in order to be able to make sure that water would not be a concern, at least availability. Director? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Upon notification last evening, we activated the Emergency Operations Center at the Allegheny Emergency Services in Lexington. Throughout the night, we developed a plan. Unfortunately, we've had experience in doing it prior with the other incidents. We were able to, throughout the night and early this morning, bring 10 water buffaloes into the city of Pittsburgh from the Washington County area. We utilized Pittsburgh Bureau of Police motorcycle officers to escort the water buffaloes. We currently have 25,000 gallons of water, potable water, available for the public's consumption. We also activated the city's 311 system this morning. Individuals that were experiencing difficulty in obtaining water, unable to boil water, or unable to go to a water buffalo. We fielded those calls, and as of 2 o'clock this afternoon, public safety officials provided 11 residents with water for consumption. The other thing that we have been monitoring throughout the night and early this morning is the call volume within the city. As I mentioned last night, it still remains today. There's no abnormalities of any medical symptomology that would be related to contamination of this sort. So all in all, things are going well, and we will continue tomorrow, if necessary, to provide water for those individuals unable to either go to the water buffalo or boil the water. So as the mayor said, it's been a hand-in-hand effort with public PWSA. As we have had more and more experiences, that cooperation has grown stronger, and the EOC not only has officials from PWSA, but we also had officials from Millville Reserve, and we've been in contact with Allegheny General Hospital and the school district as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Director, and also thank you to the officials in Reserve Township and Millville for working with us through this. The final part of this, other than the operations side with PWSA and public safety, is communication, and basically pulling together all the different entities in order to be able to deal with this. And I'd like to call up Chief of Staff Kevin Atklin just to give an update on communication.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to review kind of the events of yesterday. I know there's been a lot of questions about the time that it took. Just to clarify, the first indication that we had relating to, at least the mayor's office, was at 4:01, received an email from the DEP indicating, from Ron Schwartz, the regional director, indicating that there was a boil order forthcoming. We had a phone call at 4:30. By that point, the PWSA staff had received a copy of the order. At 5 o'clock, we had the entire public safety team deployed. We opened the EOC by 6 o'clock, and spent about an hour and a half clarifying one point of the order, and that had to do with the impact area. So it should be clear that the initial order stated that the boil order was to be enforced across the entire city, unless and until that PWSA can prove that the Lanford water coming out of the Lanford Reservoir was limited to the north side and parts of Millville and Reserve. So that little bit of time that we took before we issued the final release at 8 o'clock was to clarify for the public that the scope of the potentially affected water was limited, again, to the north side into Millville and into Reserve Township, which we were successful in doing. Press release was announced at 8 o'clock. Emails were sent to council members within minutes thereafter, and then we had the press conference last night at 10 o'clock. So from the first notification to the notification to the public was 4 hours. State law allows for 24 hours. So under state law, when you're issued a notice by the DEP to move forward with a boil order, you actually have 24 hours to do so. This team seamlessly moved ahead very swiftly, put a plan in place, had the EOC staffed, operationalized with water buffaloes hitting the road at 7 o'clock this morning with police escorts to be deployed. We reached out to the hospitals, Allegheny General, as well to the Pittsburgh public school system, and made sure that the kids had bottled water this morning. So I think this is evidence of a team working very seamlessly for the public safety of the residents of the city of Pittsburgh. And again, now we're really working hard, so hopefully over the next day or so, to prove that to beyond the doubt that the order deserves to be lifted. So the plan was put in place again, and is a testament of public safety, PWSA, and Public Works working together seamlessly.
Thanks. Do you want to take questions?
Kevin, did you say it was going to be lifted tomorrow?
No, the hope is once we get to a point, and I can ask Bob to come up, and we've had conversations, just so you know, as high as the governor's office. Was on the phone with him yesterday. They're well aware of the impact. We haven't been shy about the problems we're having with PWSA. It was a little bit of poetry that I spent 3 hours yesterday in City Council chambers talking about the release of the IMG study showing how difficult of a situation we have, and then just several hours later we're dealing with a situation here. So Bob, you want to give a picture of our current conversations with DEP?
Yes.
Yeah, I think the one question people want to know too is when can they drink the water?
Well, if they boil it, they can drink it now.
Without boiling.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's fair to say that we have to prove ourselves in order for the state to lift the order. And that proof comes with 2 consecutive sets of samples that we routinely take every day. We did take samples this morning. Unfortunately, those will not be considered as part of the final approval process because they asked for us to stabilize or verify that we had stabilized the chlorine levels in the entire system. That's one of the issues they wanted to have done before they were willing to accept any samples, which we've done. We increased the chlorine levels last Tuesday because we were generally concerned about the use of chlorine in the system. So we had already taken the action to increase the chlorine levels. The lifting of the order will be based on 2 consecutive samples taken 12 hours apart on 2 consecutive days. So if we take one at 5 o'clock tonight, we can take another one at 5 a.m. tomorrow. Each sample takes approximately 24 hours to process, and so at the end of that 24-hour period, we'll get an answer. Once we get 2 consecutive samples with no detection of coliform, then we will get the order lifted. Given what we've been seeing in the system, given the consistency of the chlorine levels, we have no reason not to expect that the samples we take from this point forward will be zeros, as they were last Saturday. And I want to, commend the staff, frankly, that do the sampling because they've been working 24 hours the last couple of days to take the samples to verify the conditions in the system. At this point, we would hope that we can lift the order or that we can recommend to the state for their consideration that by Thursday we could raise the boil water order. But frankly, at this point I can't say with absolute certainty, but I'll say that it's a high probability that we should be able to lift it sometime Thursday. At the very latest, we hope that it'll be Friday. And that's based on the results of the samples we've taken over the last few days, which have all come back zero. So we don't anticipate any change.
Can you clarify at what point it was apparent that this order was coming? Mr. Ackland said the city got word from the state at 4 yesterday. When did the PWSA know that a precautionary step was likely, and why wasn't the public informed of that by the PWSA sooner?
We were in conversation with DEP and ACHD on Friday last week and Saturday. As a result of the Saturday samples coming back with no detection, we were advised at that time that a boil water order was not necessary. The state apparently, in considering the results of an inspection that occurred on Sunday, felt that there needed to be further discussion about whether an order was appropriate. And they contacted me yesterday at 2:30 in the afternoon, 2:29 to be exact, and informed me that based upon the results, unless we had any information that they did not have to justify not having an order, that they expected to have an order in our hands by the end of business that day. We actually received the order itself at sometime around 4:30, and that's, as you've heard earlier, the basis upon which all the actions were started. The biggest issue for us was that they were not firm as to what the area to be impacted was, and we felt it inappropriate before we finalized that to start discussing a boil water order. Would have been inappropriate to inform the public of something we didn't fully understand. Once we understood and we came to agreement, we provided additional information. As was said earlier, we took the appropriate action. And I think, again, I want to commend the Safety Department for their quick commitment to making this happen. So
to clarify, the data that was in hand Friday, if there had not been additional findings about the physical condition of the reservoir, the data that was in hand Friday would or would not have been enough to trigger an...
would not.
Well, let me be clear about that. Not only would not, but as of Sunday, the state had advised against. So the information that was being looked at over the weekend that was being tested, by Sunday, there was no action to be taken by DEP for a boil advisory. It was only after additional testing on Monday, at which point the tarp, or the cover for the reservoir, was breached and the birds were there, that the advisory was changed to a boil.
So it was not test levels, it was...
Sunday, there was no boil.
Sunday, actually, the actual discussion took place at 6 p.m. on Saturday night. The staff were in communication with the EP and ACHD all weekend. We advised them that because of the general concern expressed, that we would have the reservoirs inspected, which we did on Sunday. The gentleman was unfortunately unable to get here. His flight from Philly was delayed or postponed, and so he couldn't get here until Sunday morning. He immediately went to work. We had our first review of his data. He wanted to do some additional checking on Monday, which he did, and it was at that point that he provided us the details, which we then provided to DEP.
So it was physical state of the reservoir as determined by the consultant Monday that led to the precautionary order.
That is correct.
Not test results from Friday.
That is correct.
Two separate.
Yeah, I think it's important. Yeah, that's a good point. I perhaps haven't made it clear that there are several methods by which they can declare a boil water order. One of them is, in fact, the water quality tests come back unacceptable. That we met. We did not have unacceptable water quality. But what we did have was a condition at the reservoir which, after inspection, detailed inspection, we required staff to be out there working to expose the cover on Sunday. So we had staff out there doing work on Sunday to make sure that the inspection would be not infallible, but as good as it could be. And it was at that point that the inspector came back and said, look, I think that we probably do have a breach, maybe more than one, and we do see evidence of birds that have been roosting on the reservoir, and it was at that point that the state said, okay, you need to take this reservoir offline, and we're going to have a boil water order until you can confirm the water quality. And that's it in a nutshell.
Is there a routine check then for that cover? Could that have been discovered earlier before the expert comes into the facility?
We normally do inspections on a weekly basis, primarily to determine the performance of the pumps that dewater the reservoir cover, because when it rains, water accumulates, we want to take it off. We have had occasions, because of the age of the system, where these pumps fail. So when they do fail, we order more, we go in and we put them in. Sometimes it means that there's water on the reservoir cover for many days until that pump can be restored. The issue for us is that in this case, I can't tell you exactly when the last inspection was done, but I can tell you that we determined that the pumps were in need of repair. So that was underway. But our feeling at the moment is that, or was, that there was no evidence of a breach. It wasn't until the cover was pumped off, so to speak, or we attempted to pump it off, that we found that we could not get rid of all the water, which meant that it was leaking through the cover. And it was at that point that the state said, well, you can't verify that you don't have a leak or that you don't have tears. We need to take action, and that's the point at which they declared the order.
So the leak was found Sunday, but the phone call from the DEP to you about the order wasn't until Monday at 2:30.
Actually, on Sunday, what we were advised was that I needed to get a crew in to clean up the reservoir cover so that they could do a more detailed inspection. They had a concern, but they wanted to have the cover in a condition where they could best determine the extent of any problems. What we were anticipating was that a crew could come in on Tuesday. In fact, we had them set up to come in on Tuesday based upon the concern that there might be a split in the cover or a hole in the cover. And we had the inspector come over the weekend so that we wouldn't have this person come, or this team rather, come and endure that expense unless we really needed it. So the inspector was there on Sunday. He asked us to clean it up so that he could do a better evaluation. On Monday morning, he said, it's clear that there's got to be some problems here that we're going to have to repair. That was noticed to the DEP around 2:30 in the afternoon, and it was at that point we got the order by, I think there was a phone call made around 4 o'clock. I didn't see the order myself until 4:30.
When was the current cover installed?
1996. And it's at its useful life. Again, we had programmed, as part of our new capital program, to replace it in 2018. So, with all the other issues that we have, we had programmed it based on a risk profile. Obviously, we didn't have enough information to judge that risk.
Cost estimate.
The current cost is around $9 million to restore the full reservoir to operation. We will do
the cover, or is that?
the cover and the liner. There is a matching pair, so to speak, of a cover and a liner. Consider it like a big balloon, a huge balloon, multi-acred balloon. And what happens is they put on an HDPE liner. Once that's done, then they place on top of that an HDPE cover, and they basically melt the two together, and they become an envelope in which we put water. We'll have 2 cells there so that we can do one at a time. That'll allow us to do repairs on the east side, put that back in service as quickly as possible, and then completely restore the west side this fall, and then next spring we'll do the east side complete repair.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.